I grew up in a house where my sister Vanessa was the sun, and I was the shadow she cast. It wasn't always obvious to outsiders, but inside our home, the difference was etched into everything. When Vanessa wanted piano lessons, our parents found the money within a week. When I asked for a used laptop to finish my design coursework, I was told to figure it out myself because I needed to learn responsibility. I learned early that love in our house wasn't unconditional. It was rationed, and Vanessa always got the bigger share. The day everything cracked open for good was a Sunday in late spring. I still remember the smell of my mother's pot roast lingering in the kitchen when my father called a family meeting in the living room. I sat in the armchair by the window, the one that always caught too much afternoon sun, while Vanessa perched on the couch like a queen accepting a crown. My parents announced, beaming, that they were giving her $1 million to launch her dream business, some luxury skincare brand she'd been talking about for months, without ever writing a single business plan. I sat there stunned, waiting for even a sliver of that enthusiasm to be aimed at anything I'd ever built. It never came. Instead, my mother turned to me with a tight, impatient smile and said the words that would replay in my mind for years afterward. "You're just wasting space here." Not we believe in your sister more. Not we think her idea has more potential. Just that I was wasted space. An inconvenience taking up square footage in a home I'd lived in my entire life. My father didn't correct her. He just stared down at his coffee like the pattern on the carpet had suddenly become fascinating. That silence hurt almost as much as her words. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I went upstairs, packed 2 suitcases, and left that night with $400 in my checking account and a portfolio of freelance graphic design work I'd been quietly building for 2 years without anyone in my family knowing. They assumed I had nothing because they'd never once asked what I was working on. They saw a daughter who'd overstayed her welcome, not a woman who was saving every spare dollar and cultivating client relationships that could someday become something real. My silence about my own ambitions had been a shield. Now it became fuel. The first year on my own was brutal. I slept on a friend's pull-out couch in a cramped apartment that smelled like burnt coffee and mildew. I ate instant noodles more nights than I'd like to admit, and worked until 2 in the morning finishing branding projects for small businesses that paid barely enough to cover rent. But something in me had shifted the moment my mother called me wasted space. I stopped chasing their approval entirely. Every rejection email from a client, every sleepless night, became proof that I was building something they could never take credit for. I blocked their numbers within the first month. My sister sent one text, "Don't be dramatic, Kinsley." And that was the last contact I allowed from either of them. By the second year, my design work had caught the attention of a boutique branding agency that outsourced overflow projects to freelancers. I began managing bigger accounts, then leading small remote teams. I taught myself contract negotiation from library books and late-night forum threads because I couldn't afford a lawyer. Every skill I lacked, I hunted down and learned alone, the way you learn to survive when no one is coming to save you. There were nights I cried from exhaustion, wondering if I'd been foolish to walk away from a family, however broken, into total uncertainty. But I never once considered going back. By year 3, I had launched my own design studio with 2 employees and a client list that included 2 mid-sized companies I once could only have dreamed of working with. I changed my last name legally that year too. Not out of spite, but because I needed a fresh identity that didn't carry the weight of being the wasted space in someone else's story. I moved to a coastal town 4 hours from where I grew up, somewhere with salt air and slow mornings, somewhere nobody knew the girl who used to apologize for existing in her parents' living room. I want to be clear about something, because I know some of you listening will wonder if I regret cutting my family off so completely. I don't. Not for a single day. Every ounce of pain from that Sunday afternoon became the exact fuel I needed to build a life that was entirely, unapologetically mine. I had no idea back then how far that fuel would carry me, or how close I would one day come to standing face to face with the people who once called me nothing. 2 more years passed before I let myself believe I'd built something permanent. My studio had grown into a full creative agency with 11 employees, an office overlooking the harbor, and a client roster that included names you'd instantly recognize. But the real turning point, the one that changed how I lived, came when a longtime client, a hospitality developer, offered me a stake in a boutique real estate project along the coast instead of cash for a rebranding campaign I'd led for 18 months straight. I almost said no. Then I thought about every time my family had dismissed my instincts, and I said yes instead. That single decision turned into equity in 3 beachfront properties within 4 years, one of which became my home, a modern glass and white stucco villa with an infinity pool that melted into the ocean horizon, the kind of house people slow their cars to stare at. I want to be honest, I didn't buy that villa to prove anything to my parents or my sister. I bought it because for the first time in my life, I could look at every wall, every window, every square foot, and know that none of it had been handed to me out of guilt or favoritism. It was mine because I'd built it brick by brick, client by client, sleepless night by sleepless night. Moving in that first evening, I stood on the back terrace with a glass of wine, watching the sun sink into the water, and felt something settle in my chest I hadn't felt since childhood. Peace. Real earned peace. I heard through a mutual family friend, someone who still occasionally messaged me despite my silence toward my parents, that Vanessa's skincare brand had folded 18 months after its lavish $1 million launch. The money, apparently, had gone into an extravagant flagship store, an aggressive influencer campaign, and a warehouse lease that outpaced actual sales. Within 3 years, she was in debt, and within 5, she'd moved back into our parents' house, the same house she once told me I had no place living in. I felt nothing when I heard the news. Not satisfaction, not sadness. Just a quiet acknowledgement that some lessons only make sense once you're forced to live them yourself. The moment that truly closed the loop happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was outside trimming the hedges along my driveway, something I genuinely enjoy doing myself, despite having the means to hire it out, when a car slowed dramatically on the coastal road bordering my property. I didn't recognize it at first. An older sedan with a dented bumper, nothing like the luxury car Vanessa used to flaunt online. But I recognized her the moment she stepped out, phone pressed to her ear, staring up at my villa with an expression somewhere between disbelief and devastation. She didn't see me at first, tucked behind the hedge with my gloves still on. I heard her voice crack as she spoke into the phone, clearly to our mother, her words spilling out in a mix of shock and old, bitter resentment. "Mom, you will not believe this. I'm looking at Kinsley's house right now. It's massive. It's right on the beach. How does she have this? Why does she get everything?" The irony of that sentence nearly made me laugh out loud. Everything. As if handing me nothing but rejection and a suitcase full of clothes counted as some kind of head start she was jealous of. I stepped out from behind the hedge, calm and unshaken, gardening shears loose at my side. Vanessa froze the instant she saw me. Phone still pressed to her ear, our mother's voice faintly audible, asking what was happening. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply said, "I didn't get everything, Vanessa. I built everything alone, after you and Mom decided I was wasting space in a house I never asked to leave." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. For the first time in my life, my sister had no comeback, no smug remark, nothing to hide behind. I told her evenly that I hoped her situation improved, and I meant it in the most detached way possible, the way you wish a stranger well before closing a door for good. Then I turned, walked back up my driveway, and went on trimming my hedges as if nothing had happened at all. Because to me, in that moment, nothing truly life-altering had. The moment that mattered had already happened 5 years earlier, in a living room that smelled like pot roast. The day I chose myself over people who had never chosen me first. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever been told you were less than, wasted space, or simply not enough by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, know this. Walking away can be the very thing that saves your life.